Right, morning everyone, yes, welcome to this board meeting for CCAM. My name is Usman Khan, and I'm introducing myself for the first time, taking over from David as chair. So I'm getting used to the technology and everything else. So please bear with me for at least, well, the first 3 or 4 meetings. But you're all most welcome, and I wanted to start off by just welcoming those members of staff and public who are observing. You're all most welcome this morning, and also to do what we always have to do, to be able to say that this, as a board meeting, it's not a public meeting, but it's very, very much a meeting that's held in public. That's very important for us in terms of board governance, so you're all most welcome in terms of observation. I would also just note that we're in a period, it's strange, we have this word that we use, purdah, which only comes out during prior election periods, but for those colleagues on the call and in the room, to say that that does actually have an impact on what we're able to discuss at our board meeting. It a little bit limits what we're able to discuss, obviously, in terms of being politically neutral prior to the election. So we've adjusted board papers appropriately for that. Also to say that you will be given the opportunity both to observe and also to ask questions relating to items on the agenda, and that comes at the end of the meeting. Then it allows me to do a couple of welcomes and congratulations. We're going to start off with the congratulations for Margaret, who is coming now as our substantive and permanent, very permanent Director of Nursing. You're most welcome on the interview panel. Absolutely fantastic appointment. So many congratulations for that. As I say, Executive Director of Quality and Nursing. Let's get the title right from the get-go. Also, Stephen, as our CDIO, Digital and Information Officer. So there we go. Hopefully got that right. And then Mujgan, to be able to say welcome as our new non-executive director, very newly ensconced. Got your name tag, got your badge. So yeah, just wait. Oh well, no, getting trying to push things, I think, on day one, but most welcome. So. Then we have, apologies, I think, Peter, from Rachel Oaten, ongoing. So Richard Quirk continues to act up in her absence. And then we were going to say Howard, but Howard, your holiday didn't pan out. So much did you want to be at the board meeting that you were prepared to just throw that holiday away and join us. So I'm sorry you lost the holiday, but I'm very pleased to be able to see you here today. And then I thought also, I think is appropriate, it is unusual that we have a board meeting on the commemoration of D-Day, but it is a significant milestone, and I just wanted to note in terms of all those that have served from CCAM and are serving, because it's very much also current to be able to mark with respect their contributions, and obviously the contributions of all those who were not just who they were fighting, but what they were fighting for. I think it's very, very pertinent at this moment as ever. So with that done, I will move over. I also need to be able to talk about declarations of interest. It comes into every meeting and we have to say it, but it's very, very important for colleagues observing online as well as within the room, that we all have to make all relevant declarations of interest, and those are published. But I also be able to give, if there is anything that anyone wants to add to that, and that is an available declarations of interest list that colleagues are able to see. But I'm going to hold for a second to see if there's anything anyone needs to add in relation to any of the items we're discussing today. No. Right, excellent, good. Right, we will crack on then with the minutes. And we're just going to seek approval for the minutes from April, and we have to run through that in terms of true and accurate. So if there's anything that colleagues have in terms of accuracy, I know there's some that have those eagle eyes and spot everything from typos to misnumbered or anything else, but I think I looked through them. They were pretty good to me. But anything that's come up with those, again, pause. No, good. In which case, just to be able to say if we can approve those, and I'll get used to this in terms of the process. I'm seeing Suba is doing some very active nodding. I do have boards where I have to get someone to propose and someone to second, but I'm going to take the active nodding as being a lead to say that we're approving those minutes. Great. So I'm going to turn to Peter in terms of the action log.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So 4 actions on the log, 3 as stated in there. Just one to update on. So the second action relating to the MDC, we had originally scheduled when we had the meeting in February for a Q2 update. As you'll see from the board pack, the Finance Committee last received a paper on the MDC, and there's a revised timeline. So we'll need to get this action closed probably towards the end of the year when the works are completed by September, October time, and then we'll get this paper probably for board in December. But otherwise, the actions are as stated.
Many thanks for that, Peter. And then that takes us on to the Chair's board report. As you can imagine, although I did actually have my first meeting, I was looking back with you, Simon, which is the 6th of January. We first connected, so I have had a little bit of time to settle in, but this is the first board report, so it's going to be sort of quite limited, but we'll develop it over time. And I think what we wanted to be able to do really, because we have that opportunity with Herder to be able to talk and reflect a little bit back on some of the tools that we're putting in place and have put in place to be able to ensure good governance and also to be able to help us take forward all of the aims that we've had. And talking around the board assurance framework, we get lots of these what are called TLA, 3-letter abbreviations. And for those on the call, it can be very easy to get overwhelmed by them. But the board assurance framework, I think, as colleagues will be able to see from the paper, it's a very important way to be able to step through to make sure that when we are providing that governance, that oversight, that we're doing it in a systematic and considered way. And I think, again, things like board assurance frameworks are very, very important to be able to do that. So it's to be able to just highlight the importance of the board assurance framework that we have. Then marrying that up, we also we're going to have, Margaret will introduce it shortly in terms of the board story, and I think that's another very important way to sort of very much bring to life aspects of the care and support that CCAM provides. And so you can see that sort of qualitative and quantitative in the way that we're able to combine both elements. In terms of, as I say, I formally came into the role on the 1st of June, and I'm very much looking forward to the role. And I have to say, I'm going to put on record a huge thanks to everyone, to Simon and his team, to non-executive colleagues. You've all made me very, very welcome. And I do feel very much already sort of part of the CCAM family. So thank you for everything that you've done. I am going to do, there have been a number of David Astley goodbye speeches, so I'm not going to sort of replay a David Astley goodbye speech, other than to say I think he's going around the docks of Liverpool in a very big cruise liner today, overlooking and looking at his new beloved Everton Stadium in Bramley Moor. I can't imagine he couldn't be any happier than chairing CCAM, but if he could, then I think he's got very much close to it where he is. In terms of since that last board meeting in April, we've seen strengthening to the Executive Management Board with Stephen Brumhall, who's now started as our Chief Digital Information Officer, as I said, which is very, very important role that we've got. We know that digital is going to be central to a lot of what we're doing going forward. And as I say, Margaret's appointment, and I think that's a substantive appointment, making everyone feel very comfortable. I know that, looking from the outside, you could see that there have been a number of appointments. Simon's looking at me in terms of interim appointments, but I have to say the board feels very solid in that regard. It doesn't feel like everyone very much within that team. Then also to be able to mention the Council of Governors, and I've been able to meet the Council of Governors chair, and also thanks for the work that they do. I think it is a really important role with an organisation like us, which is, you know, we're out there across those three counties, across southeast, across the southeast of the country, and it's very important. Governors are very much the sort of eyes and ears out there, as well as the work that they do as connecting to first responders. So just to be able to say that I will continue with that in terms of making sure that we have a very good and strong interface with them. And then in terms of engagement, just to say to people that I've already been out and about, being able to both physically, I now know that there's only one train an hour to Worthing from East Croydon. So I'm learning as I go along, which is important, but that was going down and meeting colleagues from Sussex for with a CIC meeting, and did that with Subo and with Simon, also meeting colleagues from East Kent and obviously from Surrey Heartlands, where our commissioning body. So a lot to be able to do there. I'm realising it's like it's going to be like painting the Forth Bridge, but a very enjoyable job of being able to paint the Forth Bridge, of being able to, and I know that my role in terms of being out there and connecting and supporting Simon and the exec team in what they do. So I think at that point I will move us on. I've talked enough. We've got a lot to be able to get through, but as I say, over time we'll find that there will be following more different chair reports as we move on. So with that having been done, I think we are now on to Audit and Risk Committee, which I again had the pleasure of attending, and I'm going to hand over to Michael.
Thank you, Chair. Just very few words from me. So the Audit Committee met last week. You have in front of you the escalation report. It's deliberately a short report, and I just want to highlight a number of things. The first is that we are at that point in the year when the trust, like all trusts, has to ensure that it submits, as part of the regulatory process, its financial statements and annual report to NHS England and ultimately to Parliament. And so the committee was very much focused with finance and external audit on being confident that the agency, I'm a chair of another audit committee, so forgive me if I use the word agency, that CCAM will deliver its financial statements and audit, and at this point in time we have no reason to believe that will not be the case. You can never pin auditors down at this stage in the proceeding, but there is nothing to suggest as yet that they would not be giving a clear opinion to our financial statements and annual report. I would stress the importance of this and the significance of the achievement, because it is a statutory requirement that we as a board, and Simon in particular as accounting officer, ensures that proper and due financial management is enacted within the agency, and it gives confidence to our partners and our stakeholders that that is the case. I would pay tribute to Simon and his colleagues for the work that they're doing. For those of you who are not financial accountants or anything, this time of the year is particularly stressful for colleagues, and I think they're doing some excellent work. One other thing I would focus on, and it's one of the great traditions of British public life, that accountability is clearly enshrined within all we do. And what that means in the context of CCAM is that Simon is the accounting officer. As accounting officer, he needs to get assurance that the organisation has been using public money appropriately in accordance with relevant standards that apply throughout the NHS and the wider public sector. He gets that assurance from the work of internal audit and the work of the audit committee. Each year, internal audit are required to give an annual opinion on the overall governance and control environment that operates within CCAM. There is a clear indication that for this year, as last year, the auditors will be giving the equivalent of partial assurance. Now, of course, we would like to be in a situation that we had moderate overall, but I do think it's important that we reflect context. So internal audit will be looking at the preceding 12 months. I think without doubt the last 12 months have been a little bit turbulent for CCAM. A lot of change is underway, but what we are clear about, and internal audit are as well, we are now in a much stronger position, and they reflect in their report the good work that Simon and colleagues have done, particularly about restructuring the new strategy, but recognising that there is more to be done, and internal audit need to see the impact of these important initiatives. For that reason, the equivalent of assurance this year will be partial, but with clear acknowledgement that the trajectory for CCAM going forward is very positive. The key for the organisation and the key for this board is to ensure that the changes that have been introduced are now given opportunity to mature and to have the positive impact that we intend them to do. Chair, that's all I would want to say at this point in time. We will have a special meeting of the Audit Committee on the 20th of June to agree the final draft of the financial statements and to receive external audit's opinion. That will then be for onward transmission for this board for formal approval and signature by Simon as accounting officer. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Michael. And I think also, thank you. I attended the meeting, and I think it was, again, hugely reassuring to see the rigour with which the agenda was addressed. And I'd like to thank you in terms of the role you play. Again, for anyone new from the public, we're a foundation trust. That gives us a slightly different standing as an organisation, and it makes our audit function particularly important, particularly relevant, and the fact that it's taken so seriously, I think, is very reassuring to be able to hear. So thank you very much for that, Michael. I'm going to then hand over to Simon. Just before I do, Simon, just to say, we're starting on thank yous, aren't we? So I'm going to just say a huge thank you to Simon, that he's done really above and beyond in terms of providing sort of induction and support for me in coming in. And I think, we know that the chair-chief executive relationship is an important one, and I know you had a very good relationship with David. But a huge thank you in terms of how we've started off, because it's given me, right from the get-go, really good sort of oversight and very, very strong assurance. So thank you, Simon. Over to you with your report.
Thank you, Osman. Today, the main topic of the board conversation is to put in front of us the objectives for the year ahead. And by necessity, there'll be quite a lot of granularity to that. But I just wanted to plant kind of three overarching thoughts in people's minds as to what they really point towards. So the first of those is our obligation and commitment to continue to deliver the C2 mean performance. And it's notable that we've made a strong start to the year in that regard, and we will pick that up in performance conversations in due course. We should never take delivery of that standard for granted. Other services around the country are struggling with it. We have continued to deliver. And so it's right that that is first and foremost in our objectives for the year ahead. Secondly, we need to make a start on implementing our strategy, and the objectives that sit before you are the start, the first statements about how we will develop our clinical and operational model going forward. And thirdly, we need to keep our people with us. We need to keep the positive signs of engagement that have been seen developing and continue to grow in the year ahead. And so I just wanted to say that just by way of framing those objectives, because inevitably when you look at them on a page, they become quite detailed, but that's, for me, the broad thrust of what we're trying to achieve in the year ahead. I'd like to, on behalf of the board, welcome Usman to his role. We are fortunate to have him as our chair at what I think is going to be a really important inflection point for the ambulance sector more generally. And I'll say a little bit more about that when I talk about the collaboration in due course. You are most welcome, and I know we're all looking forward to working with you. In addition to acknowledging the appointments as you've already done, Usman, I would just like to note that we are obviously in the stages of recruiting to a chief paramedic officer, and so hopefully by the time the board meets next, we will have made some progress on that appointment. It was heartening to see that we've attracted a really strong field for that post. I summarise in the engagement segment of the report the activities that we've undertaken, particularly the conversation around values, which we will bring back to the board next time we meet. It was heartening to see how many colleagues were engaged in the conversation and had really great ideas about how we would live our values going forward. And I think it will be good to connect that conversation to the board, but I'm sure colleagues will understand by necessity why we are not doing so this time. I'd also like to, because subsequent to this report being written, I attended the 999 emergency services event down in Eastbourne last weekend, which turns out to be the 37th running of that event and is, I think, the largest, so I'm told, event where all of the emergency services come together. And this year it was our job as the lead agency to organise that. I just wanted to say what an amazing privilege it was to be at that event and see the partnership that we all know happens, but see it visibly, demonstrably across the stands, across all of the things that people were doing to demonstrate the work of the emergency services. Obviously, for a dog lover like me, it was great to meet Henry, the Labrador puppy, whose future is set out as a sniffer dog, and Frodo, the German Shepherd, who is a general purpose dog for the police going forward. But to see all of that work in action was great, and the helicopter flew above us. But I particularly wanted to pay tribute to the work of some of the volunteers that we saw at the event, not only our own CFRs, but also the Beachy Head chaplains. For those of you who do not know, that's made up of a group of volunteers from local faith groups, and they patrol the top of the Beachy Head cliff and reach out to people who are obviously there for reasons that are sometimes too sad to describe. And listening to the work that they do, all voluntary, reminds us what an important contribution volunteers make to all organisations. I think it's just been Volunteers Week. And so I just wanted to pay a tribute to our own CFRs, but also the volunteers out there who support all of the emergency services. It's truly humbling to see their dedication. In addition to, I talked a little bit earlier about some of the kind of ways ahead, and one of the things I'm really pleased to be able to point the board to is we are embarked upon collaboration amongst ourselves and 4 other ambulance services, South Central, South West, London and East of England. And tomorrow we hold our inaugural event to kind of look at the collaboration opportunities that are before us. It's clear that those collaborative approaches, what I've called levelling up in the comments that I've made about it, are really important. We all do some things well. None of us have the whip hand on excellence. And we all have things to learn from each other. And for me, that's the spirit in which I want us to go into this collaboration. I think the ambulance service, I would say, probably has quite a way to go on its collaborative journey. It's not a sector that I've seen naturally collaborate. So it's really great to be able to go to this event tomorrow and to really pump prime that collaboration, because there are so many opportunities in that space. That's not to say we are going to dilute our uniqueness, the things that make us CCAM. It is just to say there is nothing wrong, and indeed it is a strength to be able to learn from others and collaborate with them. Finally, I just wanted to pay tribute to the Freedom to Speak Up team. Since the board last met, I was written to by the National Freedom to Speak Up Guardian, and we are the most improved trust in the country on all measures, by comparison to all trusts, not just the ambulance sector, in terms of engagement and feeling good about speaking up. That's not to be complacent. There is still lots more to do in that space, there always is. But I think it's important to reflect the work that has been done and the progress that has been made on that agenda, amongst others, over the last year. And with that, I will conclude my comments, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Simon. I will then open it up to see if there are any questions that colleagues have. I'm going to start with Subu.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question really, it's a comment. I just wanted to add my thanks and congratulations on Freedom to Speak Up. I'm the Freedom to Speak Up NED lead on the board. I've had a lot of meetings with Kim and yourself, Margaret. I know how hard the team have worked to get us into this position, and the process that we've had to go through. So it's a real achievement to get that letter, and I was delighted to see it, so well done.
Thanks, Subu. Anyone else? I'm going to go with Howard.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to raise a point on the collaboration exercise that you're going to tomorrow, because I think the PLIX, which is the patient level costing system, is a really useful opportunity to have a detailed comparison of costs between each of those members of the collaboration. And I don't think it gets perhaps the priority that it deserves, because it's a real method of analysing the cost base of each of those and their relative efficiencies. So I would recommend that we make sure each of those people contribute, and possibly even get an independent party to review the relative cost bases of each of them, because that will give us pointers for each company, each trust, as to where their efficiencies are higher or lower than the others. And I noticed, I think from SCAS last time, PLIX, they didn't complete the PLIX exercise, which was really not helpful.
So I completely agree, Howard. There are 5 themes that have been identified as areas for collaboration, they being workforce and the wellbeing agenda, procurement, where you'll be pleased to know I think there is also a considerable opportunity for us to standardise, technology in the sense of how we pick up the phone to people and commonalities around moving towards that, the digital and AI agenda, and then turning to the point that you made, the operational model agenda. We do things very differently across the 5 of us, that much is already clear. And one of the key challenges for the year ahead is to be able to explore which of those models gives us that kind of sweet spot between clinical effectiveness and cost effectiveness. That's not been done systematically, I think, in the ambulance sector for a variety of different reasons. But the group that we're going to tomorrow will start, well, the meeting that we're going to tomorrow will hopefully start to set out territory into which we can go to understand that better. Very briefly, once we've had that workshop tomorrow, by the time the board next meets, we should be in a position to sign off what we're going to try and do as a collaboration in year one, and I would expect the precise point that you've just made to be included among the year one actions.
Go around the room and go to Paul.
Yeah, my question is around collaboration as well, which is, are we going to get a sort of joint longer term view? Because year one, incremental things are good, but I think it makes a real difference if we have a longer term strategy. So we wondered how we're going to be informed of that. And
So you will get a write-up of the day and the prospectus for action. And Paul, will be really interesting to debate that with you, because precisely the point that you've just made is the one that we're trying to balance. So there is a tension between generating momentum, and so delivering some things in year one, but also setting some aspirations around longer term goals, because some of the longer term goals are the ones which could give us some really big wins, particularly in the technology space, as I know you know. We don't want to be entirely in one place or the other, because if we set long-term goals, people will, there's a real risk that you sort of, when is this thing ever going to deliver? Equally, we don't want to set too many short-term goals, because it then looks like we're just playing whack-a-mole, solve this problem, solve that problem. So the challenge will be getting the balance of activities between shorter and longer-term goals right. And hopefully when you see the prospectus as a result of tomorrow's workshop session, you'll feel that we've managed that. But it is a tension that we in the groups that we're attending around this are very mindful of, because many collaborations haven't made progress because they've got that balance wrong.
that's right, they tend to focus on the short. That's really good news. My other question was around the transformation office to help deliver the strategy, which I'm really keen on. So, because I think that will really help us actually. I just wondered you mentioned it in your report, but what progress have we made?
So I would, in the context of the current environment that we find ourselves in, just respectfully defer that question until we've concluded the pre-general election period, if we could,
Okay.
and settled on our operating contract for next year. The board will be pleased to know that you will have a chance to debate the current position from a planning round perspective in part two. But more than that today, I feel it would be, I would just ask for your support in leaving it there for today.
Thank you.
Right, looking around again. And if there's nothing further, then I'm going to move us on to board story, which I think is between Margaret and Janine, but Margaret, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And one of the delights of this role is I often get to introduce the board stories as they involve patients. But thank you to Janine and her team for pulling this one together. This is a board story that started from a compliment that came from a care home manager to us at CCAM. And it made it this month's board story, as it clearly illustrates. We all met the Ashford team a couple of boards ago, where they came and described the hub model that they'd put into place and the benefits of that for patients. And so it illustrates both those benefits, but also the joint decision making, which is focused through those clinical hubs. And those clinical hubs are a foundation stone to deliver our new trust strategy. It does depict and reflect the inherent fragmentation that we find across services across the NHS and social care, which the hub is there to address and to coordinate things for the sake of patients. In this video, you'll meet the manager from the Hythe Nursing Home in Kent. You'll also meet the chair of the housing group, who I'm told travelled all the way from Gloucester down to Kent to be video, because he felt it was so important to get the message across that why on earth have we not had these kind of services before that get the patient to the right place in time. The crew that are being referred to are Inese and Gavin. They don't appear on the video because it's coming from a different lens, from the care home lens. But you will meet Laura, who's one of the AAPPs, Advanced Paramedic Practitioners in the hub, and also the A&E consultant that was working in the hub on that day, Mr. Shadakar. And this is a case that avoided an A&E attendance. At the end of the video, we'll come back and put in the last jigsaw piece, which I think will surprise you. But for now, we'll carry on with the board story.
I mean, I've worked in care for nearly 20 years, and it was the most sensible thing I've seen for the majority of that time. So we admitted a gentleman into our home after receiving a referral from William Harvey Hospital. When he arrived, it quickly became apparent that he probably wasn't medically fit, really. So we contacted an ambulance crew for their support because he had a lot of behaviours that we just couldn't manage safely. An ambulance crew came out and they were just an absolute breath of fresh air. Immediately agreed that he wasn't suitably placed and said, right, let's call the hub. At that point, I had no idea what that meant or what that was. It was fine, you know what you're doing.
There are a lot of good things happening in this because of this hub. Okay, like we are giving the appropriate care for the patients. When the ED consultant and the priority team and the urgent care services, we will all sit together with the paramedics and we can make a decision for them whether that patient requires a hospital treatment or whether we can sort it in the community.
After about 2 hours of them negotiating with this hub, they were able to take this gentleman back to the ward that he was discharged from so that his case could be re-looked at and discharge plans could be made at a more appropriate time.
If we hadn't had the ED consultant in the room at the time and we didn't have us as a hub, they would have had to have taken that patient back to A&E, which wasn't the right place for him. He didn't need A&E, he needed continuation of care in an appropriate facility, and that needed to be put in place, but that wasn't something that we could do from our service, but he needed to go back where he was discharged from, really. So yeah, that was quite a beneficial example.
They had so much confidence in the team that they were speaking with as well, because when they were hanging up the phone or waiting for a call back, they're like, that's okay, so-and-so's on that, yeah, they'll be on that. So it was just such a relaxed experience.
The main point is to give the better care for the patients. Okay, so I feel better because we are giving the appropriate care. There is no need for them to come and wait in the emergency department for hours to get that treatment. Okay,
it's just the way it should be. It just seems so sensible when you consider it now. We just have everything bottlenecking into one position to probably 90% of the people in accident emergency are going to go on somewhere else, but all having to just go through that one point that gets so congested and is so stressful and so difficult for people. So I just thought, yeah, it's amazing, and why weren't we kind of doing that years ago? When you hear it, it seems so sensible.
It's rewarding and educational to see the other side of healthcare and all the things that go on in the background, like that discharge. I ended up sort of like quite involved with social services and like the discharge nurses and different pathways and different beds that they can be discharged into, which I had no idea about previously. So that was really beneficial as well.
I've always been around the challenge between social services and the NHS, that you were trying to discharge people from the NHS into social services, but different funding body. But this just feels so sort of joined up and sensible, and I guess it's going to be largely within the NHS so that you have the control of those different elements. But no, I just think, go for it, and let's hope it spreads across the country.
Thank you. So just to finish that off, I wonder how many of you assumed that was an elderly patient. It wasn't. This was actually quite a complex case. So I just want to talk about that 2-hour negotiation. This was a young adult who had some significant comorbidities, so therefore had to be nursed in a nursing home, but was in a mental health crisis. So immediately, those of you that have been in different parts of the healthcare system, 2 hours is nothing in actually getting that patient into the right place. So I can imagine that APP really did go through quite an education curve, learning about all the different ways. But you can equally imagine that A&E was absolutely not the right place for that patient to go to, for both other patients in A&E, but for that patient themselves. So, you know, that shows huge benefits of having something. I love the way the care manager says, it seems so commonsensical, not sure why it's not been there before. So that gives us a nice little feedback loop to what was presented to us a couple of months ago. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret, and thanks again, Janine, for the work and the presentation. It really, really is very, very well done and very clear. Are there any questions or thoughts or reflections as well that colleagues might have? Michael and then Subin.
Thank you, Chair. That's a really good story to see, and you're right, I did assume it was an older person. So that tells you a lot about the assumptions that we make, don't we, about patients. It's a question that's related to that, really. It's about mental health care. And I know we've been doing a piece of work around right care, right person. And I just wondered what's happened on that because of the handover that's been happening between the police and us. You know, are we in a good place on that where we can look after this group of patients?
I'm going to hand over to Richard for that because he's very deeply involved in it and will be able to respond better. Thank you, Suba.
So my question was really related to that case around people in a mental health crisis, that we're doing a piece of work on right care, right person, you know, that handover from the police to us, as they've indicated they're not going to be attending emergency cases like that anymore. And we were doing a piece of work on that. And so I'm just wondering where we've got to on that, Richard.
Great, yes. So we're working in partnership with the three police forces that we interface with. And the work's gone very successfully for our organisation. We haven't noticed a particular increase in activity coming our way as a result of the changes. We've put processes in place where we sit in the police control rooms. They've been working closely with us to make sure that patients are managed effectively by the relevant organisations. And I'm pleased to say it's been a great success in partnership working. We have heard news from other ambulance trusts that it hasn't been so positive, so there's some variability across England. But for our region particularly, it's been a huge success and patients are going to the right service at the right time.
Yeah, congratulations. I mean, this is really an excellent initiative and the impact on patient care is so positive. Question I've got, and I hope it's not political, to what extent, well, let me go back. What you often see in the NHS is very good initiatives, but they don't get scaled up. You know, they're in pockets, so the population that we serve don't benefit consistently. I just wondered, to what extent are we now getting acceptance across the South East region that this is the way forward?
Thank you, Michael. And again, I'm going to hand over to David, and I think Emma then wants to come in.
Thank you. And I think we're going to come to it as part of our objectives for the year. The board will have seen that the expansion, as we saw in the video, the expansion of the concept is in our plans for the year. As a result of all the engagement work we've done over the last 9 months, this is something that our partners are very much up for. So it's now reflected in the clinical strategies and the forward plans for our ICB partners. And we will be coming back to the board probably in July with a bit more detail behind the plans as to we're looking at what the objectives are. But we are pretty confident on the ability to roll out this concept so that we can see the benefits across the geography over the next 6 months. Emma?
Thank you. And just to add, I think, and there'll be a difference between concept and what the implementation looks like, because obviously we recognise different populations have different needs, different providers, different ICBs are in different positions in terms of commissioning of pathways and accessibility. So, I mean, we talk about mental health. We know that Kent has a much higher number of patients who are sectioned when you compare to other areas. So it's really important when we co-design these in partnership with our colleagues that whilst we have the golden thread around the governance and the oversight of what the outcomes are we're trying to achieve, there are local nuances that empower our local teams and their local teams to be able to create some of that flexibility. But more to come.
Thanks for additional points. Emma, just looking. Oh, Janine. Oh, no.
I thought Liz, did you?
It was you, Liz. Sorry. You did. It was a gentle hand up. You need to do a bit more waving, and I'll see. I'll get there. I'll get there. Over to you,
I
Liz.
guess it's just a question for our crews out there, because the hubs and the pilots are still routine business hours that they're working. Out of hours, do our crews' pathways change for advice and support? How do they switch from, I don't know if it's there till 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, to then overnight? And I guess just personal experience, my father-in-law, past 2 weeks, he can have been great, 4 times to A&E, but their view is that is a place of safety to take that individual, and decision-making was their only decision to make, really, out of hours. So I'd like to understand how they switch from one way of working to a different way of working.
That's really helpful, Liz. I'm going to pass back to Emma, I think, on that.
Yes, thank you. So I think there's 2 things to recognise. Number one, our staff are embedded in the delivery of these hubs. So our colleague that you saw on screen, who's the advanced paramedic practitioner, will do rotating shifts, so will be in hours and out of hours. So part of this is about the relationships our local crews make amongst themselves. She's obviously talked about education today, so there would be things that she would probably look to try and do herself, more self-directed, in the out-of-hours environment. So I don't think it turns off completely. However, we do need to recognise that there are very different commissioning intentions around availability and capacity. The other thing is capacity of these pathways. So I know the team at the last board talked about virtual wards. The virtual wards had capacity early on when the hub started, and they filled that capacity pretty quickly with the right and appropriate patients. So it's around how the services are commissioned and the capacity and the accessibility of them. There are some conversations that are ongoing that we know we go to patients overnight who would benefit with conversations happening the next day, but actually having these other clinicians in the hub allows us to then do some of those retrospective conversations in a way that previously it was a case of incident started, incident ended, and that was our accountability. We're now having a bit more of a conversation of how do we pass these into, because we don't do case management, but their case management mechanisms. So I think some of it's early days, but I think the key thing for us is our APPs are integral, and they understanding how to create that interoperability with our crew staff 24/7.
Thanks for that, Emma. Looking round again. Oh, Janine, now you're going to.
I just wanted to add to what Margaret said. Something that really struck us when we were filming this was just how different it felt from the care home's perspective. And I think we kind of almost take for granted when people say, oh, it should always have been like this. But actually, the impact this patient was unfortunately having on that care home was significant. So actually, us being able to attend in the way the crew did and find the right solution for that patient also had a massively beneficial effect on the patients who were in that home, who were unwell and had complex issues. So when we're looking at the pathway for that patient, absolutely, that was the best route for him. But actually, what we kind of forget sometimes is the impact that for the time he was there, the other residents in that home were experiencing as well, which I think was a sign of why the care home staff and the group manager were so prepared to come and speak to us about it, because it had such an impact on them.
I'm going to go to Paul.
That's such a great news story, and it really supports our strategy. I wondered, were we showing it to other people? Are we going to use this to sort of try and promote the good work we're doing?
When we're able to, Paul, yes, we will. We're obviously in a period at the moment where we just need to be mindful of what we're sharing. But as soon as we are able to, we will absolutely be using that as a real life case study of our strategy in action.
Good. I'll just add to it, and just to thank Margaret and Janine. Just just those production values. It might seem a small thing, but honestly, it's not, because it really helps communicate both to us in terms of the board, but also more widely to the public. And I think, Liz, you brought that out when you said about, you gave the example, the practical example of people intuitively thinking, ambulance, A&E, and this is, I think, very helpful to be able to, both for us in terms of governance, but also in that public role, to be able to say, actually, there can be another way, and actually a better way in terms of clinical outcomes, as well as understanding what some of the challenges are in terms of being able to roll that out. So we look forward to hearing more about that, obviously, on an ongoing basis. Right, so I'm going to move us on now, and I talked about that in my comments in terms of the Board Assurance Framework, the BAF 24-25. Peter, you're going to give us a little bit of context for that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is the framework that aims to ensure the board is focused on the right things. As Simon outlined earlier, in line with the new strategy the board agreed in April. Hopefully the structure looks familiar, because it was kind of the way that we ran the board session last month. So it aims, how we structured it is that it aims to balance the need for the board to look forward and focus on the here and now. So it covers the strategic priorities and risks for effectively phase 1 of the strategy, so the next 12, 18, 24 months. Our in-year operating plan commitments and the key areas that we think areas of compliance. Like the board agenda, the BAF's organised by our 3 strategic aims: patients, people and partners. The detail under each section that has been informed by the board session last month will be was informed by a number of workshops with senior leaders that culminated, as I say, in the board session in May. Board members will remember that at the end of that day, one of the main feedbacks that the exec took away from that was that we were perhaps trying to do too much and overpromise. So following that session in May, we back to the exec management board, and we decided on a way to refocus it and not to overpromise, and to focus on the areas that we think we needed to deliver against. So I think I'm right speaking on behalf of my exec colleagues now, but there's confidence amongst the executive that what's in here is reasonably achievable. So asking the board today to effectively agree the structure, i.e. the BAF set out against these strategic priorities, in areas of compliance. Through today's agenda, exec colleagues will go through the detail, asking for board support, because this will then inform the board's focus and the board's committee's focus over the next year. And then finally, just to add that progress against the objectives within the BAF will be reported from the board meeting on the 1st of August. Yeah.
Thanks, Peter. And I'm going to bring Simon in a second, but I mean, just again, to just reiterate that we're here as a board to be able to sign this off, and then having done that, we'll go through those three themes. But Simon.
Thanks. So that we structure this next element of the discussion, you've got in each segment a page that looks like this. So what I'm going to suggest, just for managing the discussion, that we introduce that first of all, and the relevant exec directors will speak to that. So in the first example, quality of care, Margaret will lead us off, and Richard will too. Then others will chime in as necessary. We sign that off, and then under each item we've got the month 1 positions or other items in the case of quality, like the quality accounts, to do that. So I'm just going to suggest that we hold the framework around that discussion so that we can give the BAF its due consideration. So without further ado, hand over to Margaret to start us off.
Thank you very much. So privileged to be the one to kick this off, and just want to acknowledge at the very beginning the hard work that David and Peter particularly have put forward in setting out this framework and coordinating us executives. We started from a list of way over 100 priorities across our portfolios, and we've reduced it down to this. So taking then Simon's lead and just setting out the structure that you've seen. So you'll have seen these across all 3 of our strategic aims. This first one is we deliver high quality patient care. Very straightforward, and behind that there's a lot packed in it. And one of the things you will notice across all of these three is it's difficult, isn't it, to identify, that's Margaret's one, that's Richard's one, that's Emma's one, because what we have grown and learned, particularly over this last year, is that everything we do impacts on each other's portfolios, and we work in a very metrics way. So you'll find each month it's a different executive that will take the lead in presenting the paper. So I'm just privileged to be the first one with the pink team. So the paper is set out on the left-hand side, top right corner. We have the strategy outcomes that are set out for 2024 to 29, so the 5-year plan for delivering high-quality patient care. What I'll be doing as we go forward now is taking you into those, on the right-hand side, the strategic transformation plan. So what's phase 1? So what's this year in plan? And I'll be giving you the rationale sitting behind those, and we'll ask my exec colleagues to come in as necessary if I miss an important point out. Then going back to the left-hand side, the next line down, we've got the 24-25 outcomes, and those are the things by which we'll be measuring ourselves, and you'll be able to see the IQR will be reformatted and should be done by October board. You can imagine the amount of work to be done in the background for that, in order for you to be able to track this along with us and hold us to account. And to the right of that then is another area I'll be talking about today, and my colleagues will when they come to their areas, which is the operating plan. So here we have 5 different points of delivery that will support the outcomes that we've outlined. We will then spend a bit of time looking at compliance. So this aim, what does it actually relate to in relation to our compliance expectations? And then the risks that we've identified through the different board sessions. So keep in mind that this has come up from reflections on where we've been on the improvement journey. It's important for me, especially as the regulatory accountable officer, to ensure that we continue on that improvement journey and continue the work we've been doing there. But also our planning commitments, meeting those, assurance compliance against regulatory bodies and other statutory obligations, and using our extreme risks to structure how we drive our conversations. So I hope that explains the template. David, was that spot on? Good. So moving on then to the second page, paper you delivered then. We deliver high quality care. So let me just take it out. So we start with the strategic transformation plan. So the first, we've just spoken about the unscheduled care navigation hubs. This is our first key initiative that we're absolutely all behind and believe it's one of our top priorities for this organisation. They are an agreed model that we're working with ICBs on, and we look to implement the hubs, the start of those hubs later this year. That will help us learn and will inform the future scope of virtual care ahead of year 2, our next phase of the strategy. The second aim then is in order to improve patient outcomes and their experience through enhancing quality of care and efficiency, which is a very key aim for us. We'll be meeting those aims by determining the clinical models, the pathways of care with the ICBs. We have to do this across the systems, and incorporating into that outputs of the ACE Health Inequalities Initiative. The Health Inequalities agenda is really ramping up across health, but across the ambulance sector in particular at the moment. And so we will be coming back and reflecting on that regularly through our board's discussions. That ensures that we will also be setting out our patient experience and engagement strategy, which will be a 5-year strategy, and I know it's very close to Liz's heart, and it's something we're really going to be well equipped to do this year because we've really hooked into community forums and groups extremely well over the past year. That will ensure that patients remain at the centre of all we do. The operating plan then, which is the next box down then, sets out, which is for this coming year, and it sets out the 5 areas that we'll be focusing on. So it translates the aim of delivering high quality patient care into the actionable in-year objectives. So we're going to be looking at ourselves on a regular basis, but working behind the scenes to ensure that we maintain the C2 mean of 30 minutes. We have a call answer of 5 seconds. We continue to work to getting an improved hear and treat target to 16%, improving our cardiac arrest survival rates, and reducing on-scene times for stroke patients. We will also be delivering our 3 quality accounts, and I won't touch on that. That's going to be touched on by Liz. I went through an extraordinary QPSC this week, but we've got 3 really exciting projects there which covers the span of the organisation. We do aim to continue to expand the number of volunteers. We recognise the really important and key part they play in our organisation, and are very, very fortunate that actually they come under our umbrella as you look to see what's happening with voluntary services. So we're looking to expand that number from 435 to 580. And following the approval of PSEF last year, which I was pleased you did, and setting out our plan, we do plan to complete 80% completion on the NHSC standards and principles. There are over 50 standards and principles we have to meet. We are all well on the way of meeting that, but the aim is to be 80% by the end of the year. And that supports our long-term workforce ambitions. And finally, we have 2 clinical quality improvement priorities that can support this strategic aim. There's the continuation of the safety in our waiting list. That has helped over this past year in the performance that we've achieved and has had its own benefits. And we will also be focusing on the inter-facility transfers, which is one of the areas that's come up through our patient safety monitoring as an area that we need to be looking at some good quality improvements. But then as we move down then under compliance, they're all fairly self-explanatory, aren't they? We have to meet compliance to CQC standards. Of course, we have the new assessments coming into force this year, and we're working closely with CQC to understand those for the ambulance sector and to ensure that we are ready and able to meet those standards. We have compliance against our EPRR assurance cycle. Of course, medicines management has its own regulatory, and we do want to see improvements in our NHS impact self-assessment. That's a piece of work we'll bring to a board development session, so everybody has a clear understanding of what that is and where we stand with it. We will be delivering our patient safety review plan and continue with the other regulatory measures that we have in place to do with patient safety. So that led us all to 3 risks that will be familiar to you all. We identified them through the last board development session. So the first risk really in being able to enact and implement and succeed in these ambitions is that the risk that our vision and the vision of our partners won't be sufficiently aligned and funding will not be available. That will limit our ability to deliver some of the strategy as planned. There is also the risk that we'll have insufficient levels of leadership capacity and even capability to deliver our strategy, or that the structure doesn't enable us to do that. And then finally, there's a risk that without an agreed organisational risk appetite, and you'll recall we did a piece of work on this early last year that we now need to refocus on this year, that if that's not aligned to the appetite of our partners, we will become risk averse and again unable to make the changes that are required. We'll finish off by just cross-referencing across into the IQR that you all have sent to you and you have before you. And what we'll be doing in future is, of course, reporting to any escalations. We have no specific escalations to do with quality and safety and responsive care in relation to this aim, but I will hand over to Richard, who does have some feedback.
Thanks, Margaret. I just wanted to report back to board on slide 16 of the IQR, a positive news story on 2 counts, because I know board have been concerned about these for some time. The first one is our patient group directive compliance percentage, which has, as you can see from the graph, has gone up and up and up over the last few weeks, and I wanted to pay tribute to our operational managers who've really focused on ensuring that our clinical colleagues are compliant with their patient group directives when giving medicines out to our patients in the community. So that's the first success story. And the second one is next to it in the graph about resilient stock, which is related to concerns the board have had for some time now about our medicines distribution centre and the facilities there, which you know is a huge focus for us with a predicted opening date of the end of October of the new unit. We've been working in the background with colleagues in the medicines distribution centre to ensure that we have sufficient resilient stock with a focused attention on ensuring we've got enough stock should there be a situation over bank holidays or extended holiday periods where in the past, we were cutting it very fine in terms of whether we had enough medicines to get out to the stations and onto our ambulances. So 2 really positive news stories, and I pay tribute again to the Medicines Distribution Centre staff who have supported us with that second improvement.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Margaret. Thanks, Richard. Right, so to summarise, we've got a lot here. I think, in terms of we just from a board oversight perspective, I think in terms of having the BAF set out by Peter, in terms of having the 3 pillars, we now reporting on the first of those in terms of quality. And I think what I'd like to just do with colleagues is we need to do a bit of a sense check to make sure that what we're seeing is what we want to be able to see. And then we need to be able to make comments and ask questions in terms of what we're seeing. So if I can just do the first part of it to be able to see, as you're seeing it, you've got the report, you've got the summary table, and then you've got the Guinness Book of Records to see how many graphs you can fit in a report. With all the, I have to say, additionally very helpful commentary that's put on those. So I want to just put out there to be able to see from a non-executive director position, is this what we were expecting to see? Is this what we'd like to be able to see? Right, I'm going to go, now that's a much firmer hand up, Liz. Liz and then Michael.
I'll say, as we're talking obviously about quality and patience, I think the new BAF framework and the reporting makes this huge Guinness Book of Records much more manageable. I think we're now clear by committee our responsibilities and our reporting back to the board. I think you can dig into as much detail that makes you feel comfortable, but I think the overall overview, the summary and the commentary is really helpful. And I also like the fact that patience comes first in the BAF risk register. And I think that's what we're here to do. That's what we deliver every single day. So to see that at the forefront of our BAF, I think makes a huge difference to us and our partners out there.
Helpful initial thumbs up, looking good.
Yeah, thumbs up from me. I think it's excellent. The question I'm often asked by governors, and I've never been really able to resolve because I do not want any more information, is consistency of service across the whole of the CCAM patch. So is my experience in Kent different from Sussex or Surrey? And I really take Emma's point that local needs will vary, but there must be some minimal level of standard that is consistent across. And I don't want any more information, but I just wondered how, as an executive team, this will help you get that assurance. That's my first question. And then my second question is are you confident that this is being embedded within the organisation, or will be? So if I'm the local management team of the Make Ready Centre, if I went in tomorrow or in a month's time, would they be talking back to me, this is the way we're doing this now, and this is the way we're focused? Because I think it's really powerful. And if you remember, the CQC criticism was there was a disconnect between the board and the front line. Is this going to close that disconnect? Sorry, 2 questions there for me.
So I'll start off and then I'll look around to see which of my colleagues wants to come in. I'll answer the first one, which is around the local versus essential. So clearly what you'll be seeing is the centralised level of information. So I promise you won't get any more. It will be targeted and focused on this. But the good thing about these is we will now be sending them out. So we now have system-based governance and clinical groups that are the forerunners of the regional-based teams that operations will be moving in over the next year. So these will be handed out. So if you like, this is the minimum standard for all of those. There will be variations. We will see better figures in some. You won't expect any lower figures, but it will be the benchmark. And the important thing about those regional governance groups for me is that we then bring them back centrally through the Quality Governance Group and through QPSC to ensure that that variability is understood, because there will be some variability, but we need to understand what they are and then decide whether we tolerate them or not. But these will become the minimum standards. So I have great confidence that we'll be able to go, no, that is understood in Thanet, it's understood in Guildford, it's understood in Banstead, that it will be a narrative that will become the common language. And I'll touch on the second point, which is because these have come up from the ground up. So we started this exercise, but why? What are the functional priorities? So each of our different functions in each of the areas, what are their priorities? And then we brought them up and then distilled them. I believe all these will be recognisable to our staff. I can see David's got his hand up.
Thank you. And there's a point of calibration. Do I expect people to be able to recite the third BAF risk on high quality of care when I go into Dartford Station next week? Probably not. But I do expect to see a golden thread that, because this gives us it helps us craft a narrative. And that narrative doesn't live disconnected to what we've been talking to the organisation for the last 9 months about our strategy. So I think what we have now here is something that we can say, we've talked to you about the strategy, we're going to be obviously publishing it after the election in July, and then we can talk to colleagues around, and this is what we're going to do about implementing this new clinical model. So we must not forget that all streams from that golden thread of, our strategy hasn't been developed in the dark room. Our people very much recognize it. So I think our job through the communication and engagement is about how do we hold the narrative around this is a vehicle for delivery of our strategy ultimately, which has been co-designed and co-developed with our people. And that narrative is the one that I expect to see, and I expect people to start to see an impact as we talk about hubs being rolled out, and they see that things are different because the impacts that we've seen, the stories that we've seen in West Kent start to be propagated, and we get similar stories in Sussex and in Surrey. That's how I think the narrative will come to life.
I'm assured by all that, and the one advice I would give to Peter in terms of our governance, I think it needs to be much more explicit in our governance that it is designed now to actually give us that better view of consistency of service across the patch, because I think that's important, that it's been missing in the past.
I think Emma wanted to come in, Chair.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I think building on the quality and performance framework that we've been doing now for 9 months, this just takes it to the next iteration. I think the other thing we need to recognise is that if you look at the risks, so the first one, for example, is about our partners not being sufficiently aligned. The vast majority of engagement with our partners is every single day with the local teams, whether it be at the front door of A&E or our OUMs going to A&E delivery boards. So they are absolutely embedded with this. And I think actually in real terms, having the 3, what I think are quite simple pages that really clearly set out objectives will help that real synchronicity across the patch of what does this mean to me, what does it mean to my next level team down and all the way down, so it has some truth for everyone within it.
Quickly while I think about it. Again, this is not a criticism. Most organisations struggle in getting the balance right between risk appetite and mitigating risk. And what I see, and Margaret, this is not criticism, all the documents that come up to the Audit Committee on risk, it is about risk mitigation, risk minimum. And that's fully understood because we're talking about patient health and care. Getting people to understand risk appetite, and I'm struck by the event that we had a few months ago where we had the people come forward with all the projects, and that was brilliant, new ideas. But I think for me that is still a challenge for us, balancing risk appetite and risk mitigation, because it's not comfortable. It's dealing with ambiguity, and we all know that dealing with ambiguity is never easy. So it's not a criticism, but I think it's a challenge we need to come.
Thanks, Michael. I think we have. I'm going to bring Max, if you don't mind. Which can just to be Max we have online, so I'll bring him in for his question, and then Mojgan after that.
Thanks very much, Chair. I will add to the chorus of thumbs up from my non-exec colleagues. I welcome the framework and the link between the 24-29 strategic outcomes into the transformation plan for the year. I found the summary overview very helpful, with the option to interrogate more data as needed. The narrative extremely helpful for assurance, and I also thought that the comments Margaret made around Team Pink and the very integrated triumvirate of medical, nursing, quality and operations were very well made. So yeah, fully supportive and welcome it. It's a really good piece of work.
Thanks, Max. Very helpful to hear. Mojgan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just sharing my experience in terms of the design of the slide framework. I've come across that in other organisations. That's proven quite helpful and accurate, particularly in terms of the narrative. One thing, if I may add, in terms of the detail, the gap I've noticed from other organisations is the bottom right-hand side where it says what actions are we taking on the slide. What often would be helpful at board is to add the progress that's been made. That would just make it more comprehensive. Thank you.
Did you want to add something on that, Peter?
Only just to say in response to that, so as I said earlier, so from the report that comes to the board from August onwards will include that progress update and what the action that we're taking.
You have the power to see into the future already, Mojgan. That's going to come in very, very helpful. I'm going to go over to Paul.
Yeah, I thought it was great, really good. And it shows the evolution of the BAF and the IQR and the SB, everything coming together. But I think what would help a little bit is on the summary sheet, maybe just having a little bit of narrative about what are the big things, what does keep you awake at night, because you still have to delve through the detail to get, and it's not all risks and issues are equal. So just a little summary, and there's still quite a lot of targets where we haven't set targets and we failed them. Does that really matter or not? That's on the summary sheet, so it's unpicking that really. And we've added and added. It's become the Guinness Book of Records. It's all right to retire measures if we don't actually think they should bother us. So, we could make it a little bit more dynamic, but very supportive. It's brilliant.
That's helpful to hear, Paul. And I think that idea of keeping it as a live document and that part of, yes, definitely being able to weed and park appropriately. Did you want to comment on that, Simon?
Just to say what we're trying to do again today. So I completely accept the comments that have been made about the principle, the proposal and the reporting of it. So just to remind colleagues that from now on, we agree what is on the the mini poster, so to speak, that will form the basis of how we are going to report. And that will include the updated narratives that colleagues have referred to here. So what I need to get from this discussion is that are we all signed up to that poster? And then if we are, we can operationalise it. And the points that others have made is that I will then cascade these objectives into exec director objectives just from there, just as the golden thread point, and from there out into senior managers' objectives. So the purpose of having this clear, hopefully straightforward statement of objectives for each of these three is to get us to a place where that cascade, that connectivity can be hardwired into the organisation. Going back to what the CQC found, there will be no way that people can say that we haven't created the board to frontline leadership connectivity, because it will be built in to the whole process of how we have conversations.
Thanks, Simon, and that provides that clarity. So I'm hearing around the room those thumbs up, and thank you for all the work that's been done. Being able to provide effective board assurance isn't the easiest thing in the world, and I think this does give us a really, really good framework to be able to do it. So I'm taking that's a yes. So now we're on, as Simon has suggested, onto, as I say, our pink sheet, where again need to be able to get either questions or nods and affirmation to be able to say that we are agreeing this morning all of those, both that we've got the right targets there, and that they're given in the right details. So again, this is our one. It's not quite speak now and forever hold, but it is a matter of this is the way that we're going to go forward. So to be able to confirm that colleagues are happy with those objectives. There we go. I'm seeing. You're getting a lot of. You're getting both nods, thumbs up. You're getting close to high fives, which isn't bad to get on a Thursday morning. I do think I'd also sort of concur that I think going from those high levels to be able to say improving outcomes, around cardiac arrest and stroke, and then giving the detail on what does that actually mean. I find that really helpful to go from the broad strategic aim to the detail of how we'll know it. And I think what we've also said, and I think Paul's point of being able to give space to update of this is going well, actually we're having some challenges on that, that would also be helpful as we go forward. Can I also just give space? I did it. It's one of those ones. It's almost dangerous. You know, it's like you know, flicking through Instagram and you can't help yourself. You look at another post. Whether there's anything in terms of the detail that colleagues did want to pick up, it's not essential, but I think, you know, we're having that for assurance. But I think it's also helpful if there is anything that we want in terms of clarification or anything else to give that space. Subu, was there something?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thank you, Richard, for explaining about the PGD and the stock resilience, because I think we brought that up at the last board meeting, so that is very well done, and we're moving that. Can I just ask a question on the health inequalities, Margaret? And forgive me, I may have asked this before, but my memory, I'm getting older, I can't remember what I did ask at QPSC and what I'm now repeating at board. But you mentioned reducing health inequalities, and we talk about clinical outcomes, and that's much clearer for stroke and cardiac arrest. But reducing health inequalities is much more complicated in order to look at the clinical outcomes for that. And of course, the ICBs have strategies specifically around reducing health inequalities. And we've said we're looking at the ACE ones around mental health and maternity. And I think they're going with the core 20 plus health inequalities as well. So I'm just wondering, how are you going to get the alignment on the right health inequalities that we're going to measure? And then secondly, how are you going to get that measurement, given that we'll probably need the cooperation of the system and some of our partners in order to be able to get that data?
Thank you, Subo. So we've got quite a few steps to make on the health inequalities front. So we have identified 2 of them for the quality accounts. So that is maternal and it's, Emma, remind me? Thank you, mental health. That went completely, and you mentioned it, Subo. So those are quality accounts, and the owners of those now are working their way through. So we have got details behind what it means, what we plan to get to by the end of the year, and those are sat in the quality accounts as detail. Regarding the rest, we do have an executive lead for, so that's your first step in the health equalities map within the ambulance sector. We now need to set out our plan, and one of the discussions I had with Simon earlier this week as public health sits within my portfolio is we need to be quite clear about the next, you know, this year, next year, the next year, and what our strategy is, because we can't do everything in one go. And we also have to recognise what is our part as an ambulance sector in it. And of course, it's very much about being, they call it an anchor institution, don't they? Those institutions that can buy things locally, can support the local workforce. There's things we can be doing to support our communities, as well as that oversight helicopter view we have of what's going on in people's homes and in different demographic areas of our 4 systems. And how do we share that information with partners, and how do we build up? And I think our strategy, and particularly the clinical models of care that we're going to be working on over the next year, are going to be really key in this, because in each of those 13, I think it is clinical models of care. There are different, and one of them being maternal, one being end of life, for example, there are different inequalities that will be found in Kent, in Surrey, in Sussex, and this is where working together with our partners is key, to be able to really pull out as together what we need to do in healthcare, but then what is our part in it, so that we can be the best partners possible in it. So I think you've asked quite a complicated question. The important thing for us is to focus on the couple of things, so we as an organisation know we're beginning to contribute to the agenda, but then set out that plan. And the whole systems are working at it. You know, they're all new to this. We're all finding our feet, and it's all against the context of a difficult financial situation. So thank you for the question, and we'll keep you updated. We have got health inequalities coming to a board development session in July, and we've got somebody coming to give us an example of what some paramedics have done in part of a different system. So that will be interesting, and I think we'll carry on that discussion from there.
So I think it's contained in the objectives for the strategy, one of the things that we're going to be doing is far more actively agreeing the clinical pathway down which our patients move. And I think that's the piece of core partnership work that allows us to address health inequalities. In developing those clinical pathways, which Margaret will lead on and assure the board that we've got the right balance, key amongst them is how are we maintaining that access, that core principle of addressing inequality in every pathway that we develop. And that piece of very detailed construction work, which we need to get into now, I think will be at the heart of making sure we provide a service that is equal for all. And so as we come back round it, the Quality Committee will no doubt be looking at this. As we sign off those pathways with our partners, that embeds us right in the heart of that question. The only thing I wanted to add.
Thanks, Simon. And I see, was that a nudge of a question, Howard, or was that just? No, fine. Oh, but that's a much more nudge of a question, Paul. You're doing the wave. Go for it, Paul.
This is anyway. So my question was is to help with what you said. Is the infrastructure behind? So I'm interested in the data strategy and how we can make sure a lot of this is still produced manually. Right, so I want to understand where we are with the data strategy and how we can push that forward to help us in the future.
Well, I'm sure Stephen would like to comment there. That's not a hospital pass. That's the
it's
best
mentioned in the
tradition of
report.
bringing in
There's one
colleagues in
underway.
from around the table to offer their expert opinions.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. As part of my first sort of 60 days, I'm looking at our data, where our data's coming from. An early stage view is we've got good data coming in through to our data warehouse, but we need to actually start to amalgamate with system partners. For instance, the direction of travel I'm looking at is taking this to a data factory model, connecting to the SDE, which is now becoming available with where all the system data comes from at the local ICS level. Also then merging that with the ambulance data set models that are available, plus the referring data that's coming back from the acutes. So from that perspective, we'll have a rich data factory, which we will then be able to automate, predominantly using rules-based automation, machine learning and AI, rather than the manual process that we've currently got today. That aligns to where I've been historically, Paul.
I'm very excited now. I need to lie down. But still, if I read the reports correctly, there's an awful lot of manual data required to actually get to the reports we've got. So that's brilliant, but we've also got some housekeeping to do. It'd just be nice to see where we are, because we've never really covered that.
Paul, yeah, something I'm looking at is how we acquire the data. At the moment, as you say, everything is done very manually. We've got technology platforms across the enterprise we need to be able to pull from rather than asking people to push into. So for me, that's part of my go-forward plan, is to say, how do we stop having to get colleagues to manually insert information we then pull out and then report against? It becomes more automated. That may be over time we'll get there, but I'm not convinced we can get there very quickly. It's part of my 3-year roadmap.
Right. I'm going to just come and say thank you for that question, Sue, because I think that also helps us to understand that, what we're getting here, it's the, I'd say necessary but not sufficient. Maybe that's slightly unfair, but that we have this, and then, as you say, Margaret, we'll have a deep dive into the health inequality. So we shouldn't feel this is the only thing that we're going to see, but it is the central thing that we're going to see. And that we need to be assured, as Simon has said, that what we're seeing on that cover sheet is what we want to see, and then being able to, as we've already done, to be able to do the deep dive where we need to do that on any particular areas. Excellent, good. So I do need to again have some nods around the table that we're happy with. As Simon says, the pink sheet. There we go. We're getting nods. So you've got that one. You've got that one signed off, and then. Colleagues will think that this is all free-ranging, but the meeting, I have Peter's briefing note that I'm looking here, and it says, assuming we're on time, 10:20-ish, we can take a break for 5 minutes. So
We do, though, still have just 2 more items to take before then.
let's do that, and then let's see. We've got 12:30. It may be that we'll need to run through. It may be that we won't. Let's take the Quality Committee report first.
Okay,
Please,
thank
Liz.
you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to run through the brief highlights and again a couple of thank yous. So we had some earlier in the year. Our chief pharmacist resigned along with our deputy chief pharmacist. I just wanted to say thank you to 2 interim pharmacists who helped us out and covered. Simon spoke about collaboration earlier, but Louise, chief pharmacist at SCAS, and Vicky, who's the deputy chief pharmacist at LAS, actually covered us for 3 days a week and made a real difference to us. So I'd like to say thank you to them, and just say our new chief pharmacist, Shani, started this week. So that's great news to have her on board as well. Medicines Distribution Centre, Richard's already covered, and we'll follow up with that later. Right care, right person, Richard again is the lead on that. We did discuss it at QPSC, and we have asked for that to be a standing agenda item for the next 12 months, just so that we can monitor and see the impact that it may or may not have on our clinical teams, and particularly around the mental health agenda that we discussed earlier. So that was really in that. We had an annual report on safeguarding, and the last QPSC was really about an annual review of our objectives linked to our really our improvement journey and what we needed to take forward. So we followed up on the integrated safety report and the overall objectives, and they're there. I don't intend to go through them. I think just in terms of our risk factors, 24 months ago, we had a number of maternity issues with patients, mums and babies, and we had actually put a plan in place. And I'd just like to highlight the work that Dawn Kerslake, our consultant midwife, has put into place in terms of training and developing not only our teams, but our maternity units and pre-hospital care for mums and babies. And it's made a significant difference, and also allowed us to invest in an out-of-hospital newborn life support instructor and a further colleague to support Dawn and her team. And again, I think just for the record, we do deliver more babies than most NHS trusts. And I think we forget that when our teams are out there with limited maternity training, the expectation when they turn up on scene. So Dawn's input and that assurance, and also the fact she has a phone available 24/7 for our crews to ring her for advice and support, and that's used a huge amount. So great news about that. I think the only area of escalation is around the Care Quality Commission. We don't have a dedicated relationship manager assigned to CCAM at the moment. So we're finding requests for information are coming into lots of different areas. And Margaret and Steve Lennox are working on that, so we can make sure we get the appropriate request to the appropriate place to get a timely response back to the CQC. And we know in the past that complaints, concerns, issues have gone far and wide from CCAM, and that those requests for information come to all different places. But as I say, we are requesting a relationship manager, but as of today, I don't think we've got that individual yet, have we, Margaret?
So the model they have in place now is that they're not going to relationship managers. They have assigned them. I did say to the Chief Executive of CQC, I took it as a compliment, because they have assigned relationship managers to those trusts in particular difficulties. And we haven't got one, so that has to be a compliment, right? But I have now, though, Liz, we do now get all requests routed in through me. So we have managed to get that controlled, and that seems to be going okay. So I think CQC is settling down in their new structures, and that's beginning to help our coordination.
Thank you very much, Liz, for that. And also, I will say really thank you to committees and committee chairs. An incredibly important part of, again, what we do of board governance. It's not just what happens here around the board table. It's really driven by what's happening in those committees. So huge thanks to all the work that's being done. And we will sort of see it evolve in terms of how it's reported to the board, but it's very nice to be able to have that space for you all to be able to report. Are there any questions that colleagues may have for Liz? If not, then thank you very much for that report. We have the quality account. Again, is that coming back to you? I enjoyed the meeting I was at the other day on that.
So in terms of our quality accounts, we had an extraordinary QPSC earlier this week where we agreed and ratified the quality accounts. The documents there, and can I just say, this is such a stunning document, and which was said at the extraordinary meeting. So thank you for everyone who put the work into this, and to Vicky in particular, who has really pulled this together. I think in terms of the review of 23-24 is in there, and our new quality accounts and objectives for 24-25 are our agreed priorities, which I think Margaret's already covered and is within our BAF. So I think we are proposing to the board acceptance of these quality accounts, both the review of 23-24 and going forward to 24-25. I don't know if you want to add anything, Margaret.
No, thank you, except I agree about the quality of the paper, and have already rewarded Vicky on the delivery of it. But just to say that it was important for us to thread the quality account priorities into the BAF. Very easily, the quality accounts become something that's put on a shelf and it's not looked at, and that was my experience in this when I first came, and many other organisations. So for me, it's going to be a really interesting year now as we see that just by doing that action, it really does help keep it alive through the organisation. Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Liz. Again, I'll open it up. Howard.
Thank you. Notwithstanding it being an excellent report, I just wanted to point out that there are some typos in the Chief Executive's summary, so I just want to make sure those are picked up before it gets issued. Fairly minor, but they are typos. Otherwise, it's an excellent report. Thanks.
Well done. That's how you keep the faces of the exec going. Trying to think where that was. It's very good. It's just that the document is read and scrutinised appropriately. So we will reflect on that. I'll just also though add, I was at that meeting, Liz, and spelling checks. I mean, my spelling is not great, so I wouldn't be the one to spot them. But spelling checks to one side, I thought it's an excellent report, and I think it complements our annual report and the BAF. We need to be able to see these things in piece. I have to say, one of the things, when we asked our partner organisations and partner colleagues to reflect, there's some really sort of, it almost heartfelt that you can see that really happy to be invited to make comment. And I think in terms of us, our role and how we connect with our stakeholders was reflected very well in the report. I'd also just say, Liz, just, Margaret, when you said about shouldn't be on the shelf, I think it's our duty, our responsibility as a board to make sure it doesn't stay on the shelf. There's too much in it, and I think we should be referencing it and being able to go back to it in terms of making sure that we're keeping that sort of governance alive and dynamic. But I thought it was an excellent report, so I think we're taking it again with the nods that we are accepting it with proviso of those. The spell check, always good to just press that button very last time, push the button again on the spell check. That aside, to be able to accept the quality account. So as I say, so we're approving the quality account and the three priorities. We've got the nods on that. I think we've got that approved. Fantastic. Right, now I can be able to see. We're now at 22 rather than 20 past. I will actually do a quick. I know we've got until 12:30. We've got 2 more to go through, but I had that. You know, the just one thing. Do you hear it on Radio 4? Well, anyway, the just one thing that I heard was you need to stand up and walk around every hour because you get your inflammation levels increase. Look at all the nurses going, yeah. So basically, this is for our health and well-being. But really, on a very quick move, a quick 5 minutes rather than the slow 5 minutes to be able to get up and walk around. And for colleagues online, yes, if we say we'll start very, very precisely at 11:45 again. So thanks. Yeah, we're on Margaret and Emma. Sorry, for colleagues online, we're just waiting for 2 of our exec colleagues, and Simon, actually. It's the exec. We as non-execs are over this. Yes, thank you, fellow, my non-executive colleagues following entirely in the execs. There's a lesson in that, isn't there, really? Just making comments, recalcitrant execs who are not fully back in time, rather than us as non-execs. Yeah, I did say you're going to be at the vending machine. I did also say. Right, thank you, colleagues. Just to say, we're now on to our people in terms of our strands. We have the second one. Before I do that, just before I hand to Sarah, just to talk about the latest wave of the National Quarterly Pulse Survey. Pulse surveys, as I say, people will be aware of their value in terms of being able to, quite literally as a pulse, being able to take an organisational pulse through short questionnaire form. It's proven as a very, very useful tool. So we had 616 responses, very good level. Putting us above the national average for NHS trusts, and noticeable improvements in the scores for each of the key 8 metrics compared to January 24. And that's fantastic in terms of colleague mood, how well colleagues feel supported by their team, how well informed they are, important changes in the organisation. So we know we have more to do, but it is very reassuring. And if it's not reassuring, then it's a good reminder that we need to be able to go back over areas or we need to go in new directions. So it's great to be able to have the Pulse survey. So I'm going to introduce Sarah, just in terms of doing it, Simon very helpfully, just suggesting just, again, to reiterate what we need to be able to do. Where are we going with the item? Just to be quite clear that we have 2 things to be able to do. One is we're now moving to an orange sheet, which is page 115. So everyone who's online or manual knows which sheet we're looking at. So we're going to go through that and then ask questions and be able to approve that. Then when I said about the diving into the detail of the data, that is in relation to month 1. So then the second stage is to be able to ask any comments, whether it's points of escalation or otherwise, because it may be points of interest as well as escalation. So I hope that's clear. Over to you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So just to echo your comments really linked to the National Quarterly Pulse Survey, and a thank you to all the staff who continue to feed back to us on their experiences of working at CCAM. So to move us to Team Orange, which is our people enjoy working at CCAM. Yeah, that's it. So you'll see in the top left-hand corner, we've got the strategic outcomes, so the 5-year plan. Just to take you through those sort of strategic priorities, I think, for 24-25, which is phase 1. And I hope that, you'll recognise these and see that it helps us to set the foundations for the delivery of those overarching strategic outcomes. So our focus is going to be, obviously, our restructure, looking at implementing our new senior leadership structure. And I think Simon referred earlier to the recruitment underway for the chief paramedic. we're looking at continuing to build our culture improvement programme with the rollout of the new organisational values. And this will include how we build these into our leadership development and management training, as well as embedding them into our policies and processes for recruitment, promotions and appraisal. I think there's also an interesting point around how we all live these values as a board going forwards and how we evidence that. The other areas for getting things right for our people are around retention. So we know that retention is critical for the trust. We are seeing a continued reduction over the last 9 months in our staff turnover, but obviously we recognise the need to focus our efforts on the hotspots that we have and provide some additional interventions to that. So we are looking at refreshing and segmenting our retention plan for 24-25 and to support our staff with the aim of reducing turnover to 15% or below by the end of quarter. So the next area we're focused on, so one of the areas that we saw quite a lot of feedback for the 23-24 staff survey was about staff being able to develop their careers and invest in their own development. So we've prioritised a programme of work to establish clear career pathways and to begin to develop talent management, which is actually new for CCAM. So we have that by the end of quarter 4. And I think this will further our work to make sure that our staff would recommend CCAM as a place to work. And you'll note that that's one of the outcomes that we're going to measure through the staff survey. So moving on to the operating plan. So we'll continue to monitor our key workforce metrics. So that will include sickness, turnover, recruitment and formal ER cases. Some of the focus that we'll build on there for ER is to build an employment relations culture moving towards resolution with the development of mediation, and also where we do have formal cases, that our responses to those cases are proactive, they're managed well and in a timely way. So in terms of the target for appraisals, so we're maintaining that target of 85% for appraisals for the end of quarter 4. We know that we're currently at 63%, so we know that there is much more work to do on that. So there was a recent internal audit that highlighted 10 management actions that we need to implement. And that looks at specifically, I think the important ones just to highlight to the board are around the quality of appraisals and increasing the buy-in from staff and managers to that appraisal process, and making sure that staff are invested in the process as well as managers, given the time to do that, and that part of that conversation is about supporting individuals to develop their career. I think the other aspect to that was needing to improve the use of better technology for the appraisal process and to explore alternatives to ESR. So that will be a focus of our action plan in response to the audit going forwards. We'll also be reviewing how we train managers and staff. We currently do that online for the appraisal process, but I think it's important to look at alternatives to that, and part of that will be building that into the leadership development programme that we'll be refreshing to deliver this aspect around getting things right for our people. So I think ultimately we've also outlined the areas of compliance and risk. So you'll see that as part of our commitment to a well-led organisation, we've identified key compliance areas in terms of delivery of the EDI plan, which is really important, and that threads back to the ambition about making sure that CCAM is an open and inclusive place to work. That's really important. The other areas of compliance are meeting the sexual safety charter commitments and recognise the improvement in terms of the freedom to speak up plan. In terms of the risks that we've identified, I hope that you will be familiar with the risks that we have flagged up, which are around partnership alignment, making sure that we have effective internal and external partnerships to achieve our strategy delivery, the capacity for change, so that's around our own capacity and capability to deliver that strategic change, and then identifying the historic pay issues, particularly related to ECSW and Section 2, which could impact on morale and industrial relations. So hopefully that has taken you through the main areas, and I've concluded my comments, so we'll take any questions.
Thanks so much, Sarah. So I'm now going to open it up again in relation to questions. We're looking at the orange sheet. We're on the BAF as has been set out for Sarah. So I'm going to bring Michael in first.
Sarah, thank you. 100% supportive behind this, and my comment is only intended to help as you take this forward. So I think culture is really difficult, and what I see in the indicators are some that are really monitoring a symptom, and yeah, we need to do that. So I give the example of sickness level or absenteeism or whatever it is, and then there are others for me that tell me that we're changing the dial on the culture journey, and that would be, this is a great place to work, or I feel valued here. I think what we've got at the moment is a number of indicators which are important in themselves, but I think as a board, in terms of our stewardship, I really want to be able to feel that the dial is moving on the culture piece, and I'm not an expert in this field, but it would help from your advice as you take this forward. What are the key indicators we, as a board, really need to be concerned about, to be able to say, and I say this to the regulator, I've got confidence that the culture of this organisation is now in a much better place than it was before. I appreciate this is incredibly difficult and the exam question, but I do think that's what we need to begin as the year goes on. We need to be homing down a bit more onto what is really key in this space. But very supportive.
Thank you for that. I think what we've tried to do in the 24-25 outcomes is to put in some measurables around that, and certainly our focus for the next year will be around leadership development, and I think a really important piece to that is making sure that our leaders are committed as leaders to going through development programme and recognise how we can support them in that journey. And I think when we're implementing the new values, part of that leadership programme will be about embedding those values. So the opportunity for staff to look at their managers, are they role models for these new values, and to be able to actually comment on that. I think the other thing is just in terms of the retention, that's a really important metric, I think, for us to see, are people wanting to stay and work at CCAM? Can they, is it an inclusive culture? Do we have less employment relations? So I hope that these metrics will give you some assurance that those are the things that we're looking at for this year.
My only point I come at is the brigading of them. Are they brought together in a way that gives us that journey? And the only thing, listening to what you said, is I've attended at the very end, I know my colleagues have some of the management training, I think is very good. It's the question about how you then, without I don't want to police it, this is a development opportunity, but how you get feedback that you are seeing changes in leaders' behaviour through 360-degree feedback or something like that. I'm sure you've got that built in, but that's important for me.
I think that's probably taken as a point. I've got Margaret and then Simon and then Howard.
Yeah, I just also wanted to point out, Michael, because we had this conversation when we were doing this particular page, a plan on a page, and of course we have got elements of speaking up. So there's something about the culture about safety. So people use the term psychological safety. I do quite like it. I think it describes something very important. And so we have looked at the speaking up measures, and we've included in there measures that we will be looking at, such as that reduction in anonymous concerns being raised and a reduction in perceived detriment. So those are the kind of things, as well as some other speaking up. So through the staff survey and the pulse surveys, we can see the metrics for staff feeling safer to speak up, and we're seeing improvements in that. Those are the things that start telling me that people are feeling safer, and that itself is a very important cultural message for me.
Howard.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very happy to support this as well. A few comments. I'm generally pleased with these formats in terms of the specificity percentages. The observation I would make is that the starting position, as we are now, of the orange team compared to the pink team is really quite stark when you look at the IQR summary, where you've got an awful lot of targets that are fail as our starting point on the orange team compared to the pink team. And I think we just need to acknowledge that starting position is very different. So we've got a long way to go, and things like retention, although you can see a slight improvement in the retention over the year, it's 17% compared with our target of 12% this year and 10% going forward. That's a huge way to go in terms of objectives, but I appreciate and respect the ambition to get to that, but we recognise that the starting point is a very different one.
Thanks, Howard. No, I think it is an important point to make, in terms of the relative challenge, which I think it's also, that's why it's helpful to have these three pillars, to be able to recognise that we're not looking like we'd like in terms of the necessary level of challenge. I'll bring Simon back in, but just see if there's any other comment that we got. I've got Subu and then Paul.
So thank you, Chair. So I was going to say I'm very supportive, and of course I have seen this before. One of the nice things about this, and I think we discussed this at People Committee, is that I see a shift. We've been in the data and looking backwards. Why did that happen? What happened then? What was the reason for that? How are we going to correct it? Let's see the detail, the granular detail. The nice thing about this is we're looking forwards. What's career development? What's leadership and management? What has to be in place to retain our staff? Our values are going to be this. How are we going to embed that going forward? How will we know the culture has changed? These are all, in my view, the right questions for us to be asking, and very much future focused, which is really nice to see. So I think we shouldn't underestimate the significance of Team Orange being able to, pull all that together. And I think I also acknowledge Michael's point about culture, and we've talked about this, of having a culture dashboard at People Committee, and I think because I think the challenge is inherent in the length of time it's taking to produce it, because it's very difficult. We focus so much on the metrics. How do we actually get that sense that the culture has changed? So I think we should acknowledge the challenge of trying to measure that in some way, but notwithstanding that, I think this is a really good forward-looking piece.
Paul?
Yeah, now I'd just like to build on what Howard said, really, because according to the metrics and the IQR, we're only passing 4% of our metrics, so maybe we should tune them, because otherwise it's been like this for a while. So maybe we're being a bit hard on ourselves at this moment in time. Good to see it more in sync, because we are making progress, but it just reflects it in the graphs and things.
I think that's perfect. To bring you back in, Simon.
Yeah, thank you. The first thing I wanted to say is I think Team Orange, this is sticking unfortunately in my head now, I think we would acknowledge, and I think you've made this point, Paul, but I think we all would around this table, progress has happened over the last year, and I think that's important to acknowledge that. And I think the reason why I say that, of all the pillars that we will look at the BAF, this is the one which is the long-term journey. So the conversation I would invite is that these indicators are ones that we should stick with, because they're going to be long-term indicators. We're not going to magically see things shift up a gear. Generally, culture change is the product of quiet, patient, incremental, pervasive and consistent actions over a number of years. I've been here just over a year, and I just want to remind everybody, I said when I came here, this would be a minimum of a 3-year journey to start to make a real sustainable change into this. As we turn into this year, and I completely agree with Subo's point, what I like about this is future facing. What we need to feel assured of is that are these indicators the ones that we want to stick with? I take your point, Paul, about are we being too hard upon ourselves? Because what I wouldn't want us to do once we've agreed these is to change them. We need to bet on these and then stick with them and be consistent with them. I'll offer two lenses on how we will be judged, one internally and one externally. So the external one first. It's clear that where NHS England are focusing their efforts is around retention. So the success of our retention plan will be one measure in terms of how we are judged. The other thing I think that is probably more internal, I just want to tease it out a tiny bit, is with the advent of our chief paramedic, the education and training brief will be being picked up in that post. And I think there is a lot that we need to do in that space, which will require a dedicated focus. And I think probably worth returning to once we've appointed the chief paramedic to give that real, have we got, because one of the core things that we can do to make a difference for our people is when their education and training experience is delivered by our internal capability, they uniformly report that as excellent. They don't at the moment. Final point in relation to that, this organisation has had a considerable and actually quite proud record in terms of developing you if you are a clinician. So we can literally take you from the street and 4 or 5 years later you can be a fully qualified paramedic and onto a truck you go. We do not have that same emphasis around professional management. And I would just want to suggest that one of the key themes that we need to pick up is we need to treat our managers, our leaders out there, with the same consideration and detail that we would do if you were applying to us and saying, I want to become a paramedic. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Very helpful, very sort of mature, appropriate consideration going from your challenge in particular, Paul. So can I then ask colleagues, we're just on the orange sheet, just to show my the way my strange mind works. I'm trying to remember who Mr. Orange was in Reservoir Dogs, but that's I'll Google that later. We're doing this, and then we need to be able to look at IQR. Obviously, as we month by month look at IQR, that's going to feel different, having approved the BAF in the first instance. But I think I've had enough nods. If there's anything else in terms of approving the BAF, we've had some comments in terms of IQR, but again, I'm looking, Peter, I don't know what the assurance levels are, because this is not really to approve the IQR. It's more to to be assured in relation to month one progress. So are there any other further questions in relation to points of escalation or otherwise that colleagues have in relation to the IQR on people? No? Okay, I think for now, as I say, we'll see, and it's also, we'll see, Subo, you're going to introduce the People Committee report. It may be in terms of how we sequence this, we can look at it again as to what's, in order to get the sort of narrative and the conversation right, we can see how we can do that. But if I can then hand over to you, Subo, to be able to talk us through the People Committee report.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's self-explanatory. I don't really want to dive into too many of the things here. I just wanted to make two sort of key points. The ambulance culture review. So we have asked that be incorporated into and folded into one overarching HR plan. I think poor Sarah has ended up with about 3 or 4 different plans all over the place. And, not only is that difficult for insurance purposes, it's not very helpful for her in driving forward the change. So that will be embedded within all of the actions that need to happen. So we will keep our eye on that. The other key point really that I wanted to mention, and why I was so pleased really to see that on the BAF, was around management and leadership. And I think People Committee really expressed some concern around the pace of that. It's not as high as we would like it to be at this stage, and we have quite a high target. But again, it's really important that we maintain our focus and pressure on getting people supported into management and leadership training programs. It is so fundamental to changing the culture, embedding our values, doing the appraisals. I swore I wouldn't mention that word, but look, there it just came out again. Appraisals, career development, all of those sorts of things. So I think if we can really put some focus and force behind supporting our people to get onto those programs. I'm really pleased that we're looking at the middle managers program as well now. So we've got fundamentals for our first line managers, but we're now looking at the next tranche and the next level up, which is really positive. So that was another very good thing that we saw at the committee. Other than that, Chair, I didn't really want to draw any further points out.
Simon.
So I agree with both those points, Subo. Let me venture into the appraisals territory, seeing as you did. Just in respect of the conversation you and I had, just to confirm to the board that for each executive director, it is a specific objective for them to meet that target this year. So I hope that reflects the conversation that we had. In respect of management and leadership training, Emma may want to say something about this, because we have actually had a specific development programme for commissioned externally for our OUMs, and I think it might be instructive for the board at a future board to hear back from those OUMs about how that experience has been for them. I do know it has been sufficiently positive that people who were, let's just say, sceptical at the start of it have undergone a road to Damascus awakening. But I think it's not enough, but it is at least a start, and we need to think about how we roll that out. So I was just going to ask Emma to make a comment on that, because it reflects the other point that you were making.
Thank you. So this was a programme that Tina and I started a conversation with the OUMs about. These are our operating unit managers, so our senior middle manager level. And this was very much about their personal impact, personal insights, personal resilience, and do it rather than the functional doing the doing, more about who are you, what do you bring to the table, how do you lead, how do you do all those pieces that really move people to high performing individuals and high performing teams. I think your comment about the skepticism was absolutely there, but it has been remarkably refreshing with the fact that they want more. They have really, really positively engaged. Tina and I have a regular catch-up with the gentleman who leads the programme and brings a level of expertise that has allowed him to flex dynamically on day and between days to be able to adapt the programme depending on what comes out one day at a time. To the point that we've now got other parts of our teams who are looking at it and going, ooh, I'd like a bit of that, please. So it's also creating a real appetite to understand what this can bring to individuals and teams. And this is a group of circa 20 individuals who, across all of the operational portfolio, whether that be volunteer services, field ops, EOC 111, etc. So it's also created an opportunity for them to be far more integrated in working together in a bigger team rather than just their local. But we'd be more than happy to bring something to the People Committee and board going forward.
Because I think there's nothing like hearing from people who've been through the development when this is a new thing to them. And I think it'd be really helpful if People Committee have a look at that. But I think it's also worthy of us as a board. These are some of the key people hearing from them. So I hope people would support that and welcome their conversation. It would also be a really good part of their development anyway. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to, I know I can ask further questions around people, but I'm also mindful of time. We have 15 minutes. David's going to come in and talk to us about Team Green on Sustainable Partner. We've also got month one finance. Howard, not going to tell us about his holiday, but tell us about finance that wasn't. Tell us about finance, and then also we've got the collaborative. I think you're going to provide us a short update and any questions. So we need to be able to move a little bit at pace. So I'm going to hand over to you, Dad.
So for people who are watching online, it is page 136 that we need to.
Thank you. So I'm not going to go through this structure because colleagues are familiar now. The core purpose of this strategic aim is to help us become more sustainable. Capital as sustainability, this is about making sure that we are able to meet our commitments to patients and patient safety, to our people, in a way that is sensible to the fact that we are a publicly funded organisation and that we are able to meet our commitments in a way that fits within our financial funding envelopes. So the priorities for the year from a strategic plan perspective will be the development of that roadmap to a financial break-even that is going to be supported by, and this is the beauty of this framework, by the strategic commissioning framework that we will be working with our ICBs and commissioners on, which will need to pull together the models of care that we have discussed as part of the quality of care strategic aim. So all of these three will need to work together because we can't think about strategic commissioning without thinking about patient need and the models of care that support those. We will also be focusing this year on the development of our enabling strategies, and chief of those will be the digital strategy that Stephen has already introduced to us previously, and I'll very much hand over to him in a second around what that may look like. Moving into the operating plan for the year, we have a set of outcomes which are essentially built around delivering our financial commitments, which we will be looking at in part 2 of the public board in the private session. And we also have a number of indicators that will be representative of our ability to work in partnership with other providers and systems. So you can see here where we will be actively measuring the handover delays and not only seeking to achieve the mean, because we should note we are one of the best performing regions, but we do still have areas of worsening performance. So in the spirit of reducing inequalities, one of our focuses will be around not just maintaining the mean, but also reducing the outlier area. So looking at keeping no single site exceeding the 19-minute, despite the mean being at 18 minutes. Maximizing the utilization of alternative pathways. In particular, we will be monitoring urgent community response in line with the UEC Recovery Plan Year 2 priorities, and managing our growth activity under the 2.4% measure that we have agreed with our commissioners. Within our financial plan, we have a level of efficiencies that we will be looking at, and just to draw attention to 2 areas that we will be looking at implementing our QI methodologies for. One will be the logistics area, where we will be looking at improving efficiency, reducing waste, and there's a number of benefits to that, not just financial, but also from an environmental perspective, and I'm going to talk more about that in a second. And we will be reviewing our service model for how we do make ready. That is the service that we have that makes sure that our vehicles are prepared for clinicians before going onto the road, to make sure that we are getting the right setup for those clinicians when they go out to patients, they have everything they need. Alongside that, we have 6 priority areas that we will be delivering in year, in line with the Green Plan that the board approved last year. So you will remember that we saw that back in August. We have 6 priority areas that we will be focusing on aligned to that plan. From a compliance point of view, there are 3 key areas that we will be looking to report back to the board on. One is going to be the ongoing work we will be doing in the pursuit of meeting our undertakings under the NOF4 Recovery Support Programme that we are currently under by NHS England. I am pleased to say that we will be receiving an environmental sustainability report this year to report on progress from the Green Plan that we signed up to last year, and clearly maintaining our commitments to the Foundation Trust license that we hold. There are a number of risks here that some of them may seem like they have a little bit of duplication to what we have seen before, because there is a theme that you will see around making sure that we have the right capacity and capability to deliver this plan, and clearly some of the actions that we have, in particular around leadership restructure, will help us address those. There are risks around the uncertainty that we have in the medium to long-term funding under 3 to 5 years, and that could get in the way of us securing that multi-year plan that we want to work through with commissioners. And in the digital space, there is clearly an ongoing cyber risk, both from a vulnerability that we may hold as an organization, as well as a broader risk of not being able to integrate in our data with our partners, which would limit our ability to deliver new clinical models of care through some of the ambitions that we've talked about and that we will be developing as part of the digital strategy that are very much colleagues will be familiar with. We set out the high-level ambition through the development of our strategy over the last 9 months. And finally, we have a risk around our financial controls, making sure that we're able to account for and have an appropriate response to that internal audit opinion that we have heard from Michael earlier in the session. So I wouldn't want to comment any more than that. Osman, back over to you.
That's fantastic, David. You've done a really good job, because I think we can all see here that this is probably the most wide-ranging. It's covering a lot of areas, covering finance, but it's covering also a lot of important service-related metrics. So I'm going to just again open up, because we're there to be able, this is our opportunity to be able to question anything around this BAF with a view to being able to approve it. But questions out there first? I'm going to go, Paul?
No, this is really good. This is excellent, actually. I think there's some big benefits being delivered as part of this. I just wanted to see how we're tracking and measuring those. Really exciting.
Can you give me an example, Paul, of what exciting thing you've seen on the page that you don't think we're tracking? So thanks, Paul. That's clear as a question then. So we have set out a number of system level benefits. You know, at the core of the development of our strategy, CCAM does not survive as an organization in a bubble. We are part of a system, and that is the focus that I encourage the board to have as we think about how we develop our service going forward. So you can see our 24 to 29 outcomes are very much focused through what is the benefit of our new clinical model for the system. One of the things that we're working on, and I hope to be able to give an update to the board when we get together, probably in July, is going to be around the progress around some of the hub rollout model, because that will have a system level return on investment. And as we speak, Paul, we are working, bear with us, we are agreeing the evaluation framework with commissioners on the 14th of June, I would hope, and we will be able to report back on the specific benefits we expect to see in year. We're in the process of developing those, because that's part of your stage gateway one, if you want, of agreeing the scope, in particular because we can't go at this alone. This is something we need to agree with partners. But we are looking at understanding what the overall return on investment, again, capital return on investment. So what's the people, the quality, the financial, environmental return on investment from changing our clinical model, and all of that will be encapsulated as part of that hubs program that Margaret has displayed as part of our strategic game. Number one, I want to say pink, but our high quality of care ambition.
See if there's anything else colleagues have. If not, as I say, sorry, I'm minded 23 minutes past. I don't want to curtail, because there's a lot there and a lot of value. But I think as we come through it in terms of being able to do our monthly IQRs, then I think we'll be able to pick those up. But can I take the nod then that we're approving? Thank you very much. We're approving the BAF there. I will then pause on the IQR again. We're on month 1 to be able to see, is there anything that any colleagues want to be able to pick up or question or highlight? You're all being very well behaved now, 24 minutes.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Most appreciated. We won't have an hour run over. We do then, again, we have that in terms of the point of assurance. We then have partnership report. I've got that after, I think. I have that partnership report first, and then we have month 1.
And I'll cover it very quickly then,
yeah,
Chair, if that's okay. Again, this is part of the quarterly cycle of business that we have for the board. The paper is there for the board to note, just to reflect that the efforts that we're all putting into engaging with the system, it's not just the job of the partnerships team, but I know the board members are very much involved in working with counterparts across provider organizations. So you can note the report. There's an update around the work that we're doing in hubs, or in Care Right Person, updating HASCs, and engaging with development of strategies of partner providers. So I'm happy to take any questions, but other than just to say, we will see this report come back to us on a quarterly basis, just updating on the activities that we're doing to engage with partners.
Again, absolutely pitch perfect on that. And I think just that reflection of, I think we're all recognising quite how important partnership working is. I certainly feel that going out, that we're not left in the corner of the room. We are viewed to be a very important partner across the health systems we work, as well as actually with the regional work that we'll be doing in Reading and beyond. Excellent. If there's... Oh, no, we have got something. Please, Howard.
Just one point. It's interesting to observe that the section of the green section doesn't actually have any stats in the IQR on sustainability. Observation, maybe we should. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll be, so we're, as part of the 6 initiatives, have specific tracking and carbon to, so CO2 equivalent tons emissions targets for the year. We'll be bringing those back as part of the reporting from the 1st of August. Yeah.
That's helpful to have. Thank you. If colleagues are happy, then I'm going to move us on then to month 1 financial report, and I think that's over to you now, Simon.
Thanks. Month 1 report gives our position against our last submitted draft plan, which was a £19.7 million deficit for 24-25. The month 1 revenue year to date and forecast positions are in line with that plan. Cash variances are there. Planning continues with a further submission due on 12th. This continues to work C230 performance and the overarching control.
Thanks, Simon. I think we can all naturally recognise, going back to the issue of PERDA, that we're a little bit constrained in terms of being able to sort of provide scrutiny as a board. But if there are any questions in relation, as I say, particularly to looking at month 1 performance, then we can pick those up. If there's not, I mean, my point to note would just be it's good to be able to see the month 1. The month 1 figures are, you know, we have started our financial year, and it's, you know, it's very good to be able to see that we've started as we mean to go on. Which will allow me then, again, Howard, you're here to be able to do that now in terms of reporting back from the Finance Committee.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Again, I've take the paper as read. There's really only one point I wanted to raise in connection with that, relating to the sort of performance for the month, first month of this year. And it was mentioned earlier on about the strong performance of the trust in the first month, which is great, and part of that is delivered by the operational hours being above plan, and that's for all the right reasons, namely lower sickness and retention being better. However, that has resulted in a performance of, I think, about 24 minutes or so against a target of 30. What hasn't happened, though, despite those strong operational hours, is that the overtime tap has remained open and running, and as a result, some of the overspend in the operations side of things, albeit that is offset, as you rightly say, that overall we're in line. There is a slight overspend on operations as a result of that, and it's just the challenge to the executive about the levers when we get those operational hours on the front line, making sure, you know, it's a deliberate decision. So we're in a very strong position. The question is it a sort of a strategic decision to go ahead and carry on with that overtime to deliver and get ahead of target in these early months? Or is it happening by default that we've left the tap running on overtime and we've had an overspend, which, as I say, fortunately has been offset elsewhere? But that was really the challenge. That's my main point. Thanks.
Thank you for the oversight of the report, and very important point to raise. I think, Simon, you'll want to come in on that.
Yeah. So, Howard, it is a good point. I think it would be fair to say we've been asked to look again at how we can further improve our performance in this early part of the year. And I will brief the board in part 2 on some more detail in relation to those arrangements. Equally, I accept and acknowledge the challenge around making sure we've got the controls calibrated to a very fine level about not spending money that we don't need to. So we've got impulses that are twin, I think it would be fair to say, and I'll pick up the detail of some of that in part 2 if I may, but to acknowledge your point, and it's something that as an executive group, I've asked Simon just to look again, particularly given the financial context, at the controls that we have in place this year, which will be reported through to FIC after we've debated them next week at EMB, because it is incumbent upon us, particularly in these very straitened financial times, to do as much as we can to control our costs. And so I've asked Simon to take the lead on that, and that will be reported back to you and FIC in due course.
Thanks, Simon. I'll again see if there's anything in relation to the presentation of the report that Howard gave that any colleagues want to be able to raise. Looks like not. In which case, again, to thank you, Howard, and the committee in terms of the work you're doing. I know we'll obviously ongoing scrutiny throughout the year. I just have then to be able to hand back. Do you want to say anything else about the ambulance collaboration? Because you've already done it.
I thought I had a fairly good set of questions on that earlier on. So I would just say this will form a regular agenda item, probably minimum of every 6 months, maybe once a quarter, just to update you on the work of the collaboration. So it is for your information here.
Thank you very much, Simon. Right. Well, I think that draws, according to my sheet, you can see how attentively I'm looking at the sheet to be able to see I'm not missing anything. But we have that board effectiveness. Oh, I've done this in so many boards. It's so difficult. I mean, no one actually, to be able to say, have we been compassionate, curious, and collaborative? I'd probably, if anyone wants to make a comment, they are able to do that. But I will certainly be getting your feedback and thoughts on chairing. So I will do that informally, probably over our lunch and beyond that. But I feel certainly people have been able to do that, even within the constraints we've had of being able to work within the PERDA regulations. If we don't have any other business, I don't believe we have AOB looking over at Peter, then I'm told I have to close the meeting before being able to ask if there's any public comments. So I will do that in terms of closing the meeting at just a couple of minutes over time, and then to be able to say to colleagues if there are any questions from the public. If there are, then I can see. Yeah. Alison. Yes. Excellent, Alison. Well,
hi there.
Congratulations for staying on right to the end. We're all looking forward to your question.
It's not a question as much as just an observation on your last point, just a reflection from me, I guess, in terms of how the board today felt as an external partner watching and listening to your conversation. It felt very much collaborative and joined up with the right priorities, and the BAF looks fantastic and the exciting and I think the way forward. So yes, thank you.
You can come back anytime, Alison. Just to be able to say that's exactly the type of comments we want. No, thank you for that. Thank you for that, because it is actually that being able to see what it looks like quite literally from the outside is very important to hear. So thank you very much. That's very good to hear, and thank you for your attendance at the meeting. So with that's a nice point to finish on, isn't it? We'll go and get our sandwiches on. Also to be able to say, so thank you, Alison, and also thanks very much. Max, you'll be joining us in part 2. I think we're all done and we're allowed to be able to get some lunch, and then we have 30 minutes, I believe. We're starting at 1 o'clock, so we have 25 minutes. Thanks very much.